Good morning. My name is Diane K. Gelder, and I serve as the Outreach Trustee on your DuPage UU Church Board of Trustees. We want to welcome everyone this morning to our open and inclusive virtual community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and pledge to support one another as we explore these paths. We are so glad you were able to find us and join us for our live streamed service today. Please check the church website at www.dupageuchurch.org for updates. If you search under DuPage UU Church on Facebook, you will find a number of ways to be in community with us as well. A couple of announcements this morning. Please join us for coffee. This Sunday, join us at our Zoom coffee hour. Zoom gives us a way to create small groups at random. This way, you might be grouped with someone you haven't met yet and get to make a new friend. The number of 4-person groups depends on how many people attend. We will see you there. The Zoom link can be found on the Members tab of our website and in the weekly church email. Our second announcement, Auction 2020 Star Trek. Another virtual first during this interesting year. Donors and bidders boldly stepped up to say, "Make it so." The auction committee thanks all who have assisted and participated. And remember, you may bid and outbid until noon today. If you have purchased tangible items, please pick them up at church today from 3 to 6 p.m. And our last announcement, your ministerial search committee needs you to complete the second congressional survey, a very short 3-question survey about our congregation's diversity. The link for the survey was emailed to church members on Friday morning, and it is also in the weekly church email sent November 5. This is the last day to complete the survey, so please find it and fill it out. The search committee also invites you to take part in an anti-bias workshop called Beyond Categorical Thinking. Registration has just closed, but if you are interested in attending, please contact Karen Hutt to see if arrangements can be made. Further information is on the Ministerial Search information page.
Good morning. Do we laugh or cry? Do we even know what to do next? Even when we think we know the answers, even if the answers were what we desired, there is work to do. So much work to do. Let us hold on to each other, lend each other our strength for the days ahead, and remember to lend our compassion to others who may be hurting today. Even in victory, let us be gracious. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. And Ms. Ellie is going to do our chalice lighting.
We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other and others, and faith in ourselves, also to be welcoming to whoever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So we gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
Thank you, Ellie. Our opening hymn is We'll Build a Land. It is number 121 in the gray hymnal, and the words will be on your screen.
Church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
It is time to gather. I'm going to tell you a story about hymn number 123 in our gray hymnal. Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade is one of the most often sung hymns in UU churches. In 2007, Kimberly French interviewed Carolyn McDade about Spirit of Life for an article in the UU World magazine. This is a part of that story, describing the night that Carolyn McDade wrote the song. Like much of McDade's music, the story of writing Spirit of Life was a very personal one. Late one night in the early 1980s, she was driving her close friend Pat Simon home from a frustrating meeting dealing with Central American solidarity, a movement she participated in to oppose U.S. policies in Central America. What she remembers most clearly was the feeling that she had. When I got to Pat's house, I told her, "I feel like a piece of dried cardboard that has lain in the attic for years. Just open wide the door and I'll turn to dust." I was tired, not with my community, but with the world. She just sat with me, and I loved her for sitting with me. McDade then drove home. I walked through my house in the dark, found my piano, and that was my prayer. May I not drop out. It was not written, but prayed. I knew more than anything that I wanted to continue in faith with the movement. The song started as a prayer by a woman who was trying to stay in faith with a larger social justice movement. But Spirit of Life slowly grew into a life of its own. The song spread to UU congregations, and when the Unitarian Universalist Association published our hymnal Singing the Living Tradition in the early 1990s, Spirit of Life was included. It had become an important hymn for Unitarian Universalists. For many UUs, this hymn is a regular part of coming together. A creative UU added hand signals. Some churches use Spirit of Life as part of their weekly service, as the chalice lighting, or as part of the closing. It has also been sung as a prayer of strength. In 2003, at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, as hundreds of UUs gathered for the banner parade, a man from Colorado had a heart attack in the middle of the crowd. As medical first responders worked to save his life, those gathered spontaneously broke into singing Spirit of Life. Spirit of Life began as a prayer by a single woman with no intention of it becoming a hymn for a religious movement. However, that is exactly what happened to it. In the hymn, we sing, "Roots hold me close, wings set me free." In this case, the roots are the prayerfulness that is at the center of the song's creation, and the wings are all of us who sing it and spread it throughout our faith community. Please join us in singing this prayer, hymn number 123 in the gray hymnal, Spirit of Life.
Come unto me, hold me close, wings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Election Day by the Reverend Gary Kowalski. It is the day before the election as I write these lines, and whatever the outcome, I will be glad when it's over. Some will be elated by the results, and others will feel dejected. But regardless of who wins or loses, our world will still be broken and suffering from ills that government is powerless to cure. Our lives will still be chaotic and in need of tranquility. Grief and loss will continue to haunt us. We will still face the challenge of finding meaning and a faith that can sustain us through these tough times. Political campaigning in America often carries messianic overtones, and politicians collude in the drama by puffing their biographies to mythic proportions. They make big promises, but no new administration can deliver friendship, peace of mind, personal integrity, or a sense of self-worth. Finding the qualities that make life worth living, building these qualities into our daily lives, and passing them along to our children will continue to be our personal responsibility, regardless of who controls Town Hall, Congress, or the White House. Voting is important, but there are many other ways in which we can exercise power in our own lives and influence the world for the better. Self-government, after all, begins at home, with how I treat my neighbor, relate to my family, care for my community, and how I work and play. Hope for the future depends less on who gets elected than on our ability to exercise our own power for good.
In reflecting upon the dispiriting time in which we live, I've come to believe that the basic religious response is to refuse to be dispirited for long. May we seek and find grounding wherever it may be found, perhaps in the buds blooming, in the grace of a touch, a smile, a word, a helping hand, a decision or vote or election that goes well, a discovery that enlightens or encourages us. May we trust in the Spirit that will not be quelled forever, that rises up in people from some mysterious source, energy that comes again to affirm that people matter, their needs and aspirations matter, and that the condition of people's flourishing is the cultivation of truth and love. Those words were "May We Trust in the Spirit" by Greta Crosby. I'd like to invite you now into a few moments of contemplative song as we sing Meditation on Breathing, 1009 in the Teal Hymnal.
Breathe in. read out loud.
Instead of erasing history, perhaps we should put it into context. Imperfect people did some good and some bad. Perhaps we should recognize their contributions as well as their flawed humanity. In keeping with our theme for this service of healing from an electoral anxiety syndrome, I welcome you to think about that way of balance as we do our collection.
So how have you been this week? It was just a regular week with not much going on, right? No? Oh yeah, there was an election. Actually, in a sense, it's still going on, and it feels like this week has been such an emotional roller coaster. But the outcome of all the drama, counts and recounts and legal challenges matters to us, not just in terms of who will sit in the White House, but the course of our country and our policies towards the people from whom we are collectively responsible. So I thought I'd spend some time considering current events in light of our fifth Unitarian Universalist principle, which is to say, we affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. While there may be some who think churches should not concern themselves with or discuss politics, it is actually in our UU DNA. If you are celebrating with a sense of victory, and I know I am, I also want us to consider some other factors about current events. When our worship theme for the month is healing, and our nation has been through all that has happened in recent years, and especially in recent days, one might ask, how do we heal from this? I have been talking about the rise of incivility in civic discourse for years now, and wonder if I've become like the drummer who only knows one beat, or the canary who only knows one song. And yet, with each day, some new crazy thing happens, some tweet upsets the whole economy, or some shooting is necessarily responded to by huge protests, or we find out some new and horribly immoral thing, like forced sterilization at immigrant camps on the border, not to mention the kids still in cages, and the locations of the parents are now unknown, all due to draconian policies put in place by the current administration. Most ministers avoid preaching about partisan politics, and I do not endorse candidates for office from this pulpit. But I do speak to our values, morals, and cry out for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. By the way, that's another of our principles, the second UU principle. And I consider this a foundational value in how I believe we should all approach our interactions in society, along with upholding the inherent worth and dignity of every person and recognizing we're all part of an interdependent web of existence. It's not every day that I quote 4 of our 7 principles all in one sermon, but that is what I'm talking about today. You see, I think these principles are the answer to the question we started with: how do we heal from all that has happened in our society recently? The source of much existential angst for myself, and I think many UUs and other progressively minded folks, has been our value of upholding justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, as that particular principle seems to have been so violated repeatedly and egregiously over the last several years. People across this nation have been seeking justice when it seems that the lives of people of color are not valued the same as the lives of the dominant group. There is among us, those of us who are in that dominant group, who also feel justice should be accessible to people of color too. Watching the election results this week has given many thoughtful people pause when they realize that half of the nation thinks that the policies of this current administration are all right. And that has been an alarming realization for many of us. We have also been speaking out about equity, how all should be treated with fairness. This applies to race, although it also encompasses access to health care, employment, home buying, and so on. You know, access to the so-called American dream. And it is infuriating when a billionaire can pay $700 in taxes, while my tax bill last year exceeded $12,000. I know I'm not a rich man, And I also know there are many people much poorer than me who paid more taxes than some very rich people. And let us also speak of compassion. When fires burned thousands of acres in my home state and hundreds of people lost their homes, it might have been nice if our government showed them some compassion. The same when hurricanes struck Puerto Rico and an island mostly populated by Spanish-speaking people of color, our administration did not feel they were worthy of compassion. And this is heartbreaking. It hurts no one to show a little care for other people, especially in their times of trials and tribulations. Summing up our second principle, as I just have, and speaking of compassion, it brings to my mind our first principle, to uphold the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Why have compassion for another person? Because they are worthy. Deep in their heart, in their very bones, down to their cells, they are all worthy. Regardless of race or ethnic background, regardless of wealth or other status, and I must even say, regardless of political affiliation, all people are inherently worthy beings who are due their dignity. It is beyond the authority of any human being to rob another of their dignity. And when another does so, they should be held to account. I don't think anyone from the current administration will really be held to account, unfortunately, as much as I think true crimes should truly be prosecuted. I want to caution us, while we are speaking of inherent worth and dignity, that we not fall into the trap of fantasizing some punishment for all the things we believe our current president is guilty. While we yearn for justice and will be relieved if justice is done and disappointed if it is not, let us not stray into the territory of the Game of Thrones series. We cannot have the ruler stripped of power as well as clothing and marched out of the palace and through the streets of the capital naked, being pelted by rotten vegetables. That may have been a very dramatic scene in King's Landing, but it is not a scene for Washington, D.C., or any place else in the real world. Why? Because this fantasy is not worthy of us, and it is not upholding the inherent worth and dignity of the other, no matter how angry, repulsed, or self-righteous we may feel about that person. Let's separate our concepts of human worthiness from the repercussions of one's behavior, and let the repercussions be just, equitable, and compassionate, even if that person would not extend the same grace to another. Who cares what he would do? Who cares what he would do? What I care about is, what would you do? What would I do? Are we, in the midst of the pain and tumult of current events, still upholding the inherent worth and dignity of all people, even those wearing red hats? Will we treat them as we would wish to be treated? Yes, I know they might not treat us with compassion. Who cares? Again, I care about what I would do and what you would do. Will we treat others as we wish to be treated? Because this comes from a place of healing and is a way forward in our society. In fact, it may be the only way forward. Finally, I want to say something about our seventh principle, which recognizes interdependency in all of existence. This is, for me, the most theological point that I wish to make. At the same time, it is also very much a real-world point we should consider. As I said earlier, what affects one of us affects us all. I'm not the first to say this. Many preachers, teachers, and even politicians before me have made this point. In the book of Matthew, it is recounted that Jesus said to the authorities, "What you do to the least of us, you do to me." In the modern era, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote about interdependency and justice in his letter from the Birmingham jail, and he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Our relationships are, by nature, interdependent. Even our politics are interdependent. We know also that our climate is interdependent, in which pollution caused by industry in one nation affects the whole planet, that disregarding climate change has contributed to climate disasters of what some might think of as biblical proportions. We need to consider everyone in the world and everything in the world as an interdependent system if we wish to come up with solutions that will make a difference. Public policy is one way we do this, and is why politics is very much a topic that can be discussed in church. We want our values reflected in public policy. You might suspect that this is a challenging sermon to have written, in no small part due to all of the uncertainty we still have in our society right now. Regardless of the election's outcome, that really has not yet changed. There is still uncertainty, and there is still the work of healing to do. It would be easy to bury one's head in the sand like the ostrich, but we really cannot. I've had people in my life say they just ignore politics, but I am reminded of Timothy Snyder, who wrote, "Life is political, not because the world cares about how you feel, but because the world reacts to what you do. The minor choices we make are themselves a kind of vote, making it more or less likely that free and fair elections will be held in the future." In the politics of the everyday, our words and gestures, or their absence, count very much. The symbols of today enable the reality of tomorrow. Indeed, our world, nation, society, neighborhoods, and families are all interdependent structures of the human experience. We have no choice but to be political. Whenever two or more people are gathered in anyone's name, it is political. Politics is, above all, a relational way for people to interact. Politics is also a worldview, and sometimes that overshadows the relationships and compromise that are part of any political process, but let's not forget it. It is when we are grounded in relationships that we address political issues effectively. It is grounded in relationships, based in an understanding of interdependent mutuality and respecting the other's inherent worth and dignity, that we will begin the work of healing the wounds of the last 4 years and more. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. Our closing hymn is one that we don't know, but the words are oh so appropriate, so we're going to try to learn it. It is number 125 in the gray hymnal, "From the Crush of Wealth and Power."
From the crush
We see the dawn, and it is bright, and we leave behind us days of darkness. And in the dawning light we can now see so many around us, so many who have been hurting. Let us approach the coming days with intention, humility, and grace to do the work of healing for us, for others who hurt today, and for all. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all.